Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to get started here relatively soon, but just let people kind of come in to the Facebook Live session so we can get all the information out to everyone all at once. So, like I said, we'll be starting here relatively soon.
So yeah, we'll give you guys the opportunities to ask questions in the latter half of the event. We're going to cover some general information first. So just hold on to your questions until a little bit later, and then we'll do our best to get all of them answered. Okay.
All right, so everybody, welcome to our application help session. Our first one. It's going to be obviously here on the platform on Facebook. We just wanted to, like I said, welcome you and just tell you a little more about our graduate programs and answer ultimately any questions that you have regarding the application itself. So my name is RJ Burns. I work here in the College of Nursing for recruitment and admissions. And this is my colleague, Doug.
Hi, I'm Doug Hedich. I, like RJ, am a program coordinator in the College of Nursing for recruitment and admissions at The Ohio State University. Just a little bit of business before we get started. We're going to talk for about maybe 15-20 minutes at the start. We're going to go over some frequently asked questions that we get about the application process to hopefully answer many of the questions you may have. And then once we're done, we'll then just sort of open it up to answering any questions that you do still have. And in that sense, in that case, just go ahead and when we hit that point, put your questions into the chat window. Our colleague Megan is monitoring the chat window, and she'll flag us down, and we'll get your questions answered at that point. Also, do want to let you guys know this session is being recorded, and upon your request, we can provide you with a recording after the fact. So if you're not taking notes or anything and you don't remember specifics that we go over, we can provide it to you afterward. You just need to shoot us an email and we can get that recording to you.
So to kind of give you the purpose of today's event, like we kind of briefly discussed, it's just really to provide helpful information in terms of submitting a completed application by the October 31st deadline. So for those specific programs that we do have a deadline coming up here at the end of the month, just kind of noting what that looks like to submit that completed app. Answer any questions you may have about the Master of Science program, Master of Science in Nursing program, BSN to DNP, specifically following into that October 31st deadline. Because we kind of do have limited time here today on Facebook, it's not going to be in depth for each individual program itself. We're kind of going to cover multiple programs here that may have some overlap. That way, like I said, is more so along the lines of processing and how to get that completed app. But if you're looking for some specific information on the program that you will be applying to, or maybe are in the process of applying to, feel free to go to nursing.osu.edu. As that's going to have the specifics, again, on all of our programs and what's required and things along those lines.
Yeah, so the first thing that I want to talk about that we get a lot of questions about is the purpose and goal statement component of the application. This is a component that's required of just about every program that we offer at the graduate level. And this is a 2 to 3 page essay discussing in depth why you've decided to apply to whichever program you're applying. But there's many things that can be covered that obviously feed into that, that decision, that question. One thing that we always recommend that you cover in your purpose and goal statement is the research that you've done leading up to the application. The faculty that will be reviewing your application really want to know that you have a very clear understanding of our program, as well as the specialty or level of advanced nursing that you are looking to go into after graduation. So for example, if you're applying to the psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner specialty, they want to know that you have a very clear understanding of what a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner does on a day-to-day basis, and what it means to hold that advanced certification. So, you know, it's good to do your research up and have that clarified in your mind so that you can talk about that in depth in your purpose and goal statement. They also want to know about your particular passion for the field. They want to know about your goals for after graduation. You know, they know what nursing is all about, but they want to know what attracted you to nursing and why you're now looking to pursue advanced education in nursing, and what you plan to do with that after graduation. So if there's a particular area of the country that you want to work in after graduation, or a specific demographic you want to work with, those are all really good details to talk about in your statement, because they just want to get a really true in-depth understanding of who you are as an applicant on every level. Finally, you also want to discuss any attributes that you feel make you a strong candidate, or sort of set you apart from the rest of the applicant pool. Good attributes that we look for in candidates are things like leadership, compassion, determination, critical and analytical thinking skills. And you can demonstrate those things both in your purpose and goal statement and in other areas of your application, like your interview, or maybe your recommenders could discuss, you know, anecdotes of when they were working with you or teaching you that you demonstrated those attributes. And not just those, anything you feel that you think makes you a good nurse and makes you a good candidate for advanced practice nursing are good things to discuss in your purpose and goal statement.
Yeah, and another question we typically get is built around or hovering around the letters of recommendation. And I would say, you know, the typical process for that is something that's not frequently known to students applying to our program. Some students are receiving letters of recommendation from their recommender, maybe in the mail, or they'll have the hard copy and we'll try to send that in. So we just want to clarify kind of what that looks like for you, whether you're looking to start the process here soon or you're kind of, you know, in that right now. But basically it's electronic, it's all digital. You'll fill out an application, so that, you know, application on our grad and professional admissions website. And when you're doing that, at the end of the application, it'll ask for your recommenders' names and their contact information, their email address. And so with that, once you submit the application, it'll trigger an email to be sent out to your recommenders, and they will be able to attach their recommendation as a PDF and fill out a quick questionnaire and submit that. They'll have directions on how to submit that, so you know they're not left in the dark in terms of that process. And then once they submit it electronically back to our grad and professional admissions office, our colleagues over there will update your applicant center. And so that's something that you can, and we'll talk a little bit in depth with that a little bit later, but it's basically something you'll be able to monitor the status of your application materials. And just note that you'll want to have these completed by October 31st. The common theme here, just noting that if they aren't in by that point, then they wouldn't be considered for your application, and we just obviously want to be transparent with that. So just getting those in as soon as possible. It's kind of out of your hands in terms of actually submitting it, but you can reach out to your recommenders, noting that they will be able to submit it for your application specifically. So you're just giving them a heads up, hey, the application deadline, October 31st, needs to be in by that point, is definitely a key part there.
Yeah. A couple other components of the application that I just want to touch on briefly that we do get questions about pretty often. The first is our online interview. If you've applied to a graduate program here at the College of Nursing at Ohio State in the past, you may have participated in an online interview. In the past, we typically did them after the application deadline. A change for this year and moving forward is that we're now requiring all applicants to complete an online interview ahead of the deadline, by October 31st. So as soon as you've submitted an application, you're then able to go and complete the online interview through the portal available on our website. And complete the interview. And these are going to be required by, again, most of our graduate programs to complete this interview. The online interview is, it tries to mirror the idea of an interview as much as possible, but you're not actually going to be talking directly back and forth with someone. What it is actually, the way it's set up is you will log into a third-party web page called HireView, and it will record you answering like 4 or 5 interview questions over your webcam, over your microphone, and you basically have a couple of minutes to answer each question and about 10 or so seconds to read the question and think about your answers. So you don't have the questions ahead of time, so it does mirror that interview format a little bit, that you're having to come up with your answer on the spot. But there's no like gotcha questions. They are pretty straightforward. It's things literally about like, why do you want to be a nurse? Those things like that, stuff you've already thought about pretty much in detail. So it's just really an opportunity to bring to light some other aspects of your application that you maybe want to touch on in more detail. So we do ask that you treat it professionally. Imagine that you are coming in to sit down with faculty. So dress professionally, be mindful of what's going on behind you when you're sitting down. Find a quiet place in your house to do it where you're not going to be interrupted, that kind of thing. And then just make sure you get it done before October 31st. I also want to talk about transcripts. Just real quick, we do need transcripts from all schools where you may have attended or earned college credit. Really no exception to that. So even if it was like one course back in high school that you've already had transferred to another school, we still need a transcript from that institution. There's 3 different ways that you can submit transcripts. 2 of them are considered official, and that is by way of direct mail or electronically direct from the institution to our Office of Graduate Admissions. Those are the 2 official methods. There is also a way that you can scan an official copy that you may have on your person and upload it like the other materials of your application. Doing so still will work for the purposes of your application, so we can still use that to process it and determine your admission. But if you are admitted, you will still need to provide us with an official document through the other 2 channels I mentioned. Lastly, just to also briefly touch on resume or CV, the other thing that pretty much all of our programs require as part of the application process. This is going to be a standard resume or CV, standard format. You probably already have something like this saved on your computer that you've been using to apply for jobs. The one thing we recommend is that you do, before submitting it, just comb through it, see if there's any small adjustments you want to make that may be more relevant to applying to one of our graduate programs. Imagine you were applying for a nursing job. What small changes would you make to your resume to highlight experiences or skills that would be more relevant than would be in other career paths? That's the only thing. And the resume, like the purpose and goal statement, can be uploaded to your application either at the time you apply or by way of the uploader afterward.
To kind of finalize some things here in terms of the deadline, just to kind of put that back into context, items that are needed that might be submitted by third parties, transcripts, letter of recommendations, GRE if needed. Those are things that might have some processing timeline. So just noting that as we're getting up close here to the October 31st deadline, that you're getting those. If they're not marked as complete on your to-do list, you're getting those in as soon as possible because there is some processing time there. If you haven't started the application, just starting that application, getting it on file might get some of those things flowing. And so, you don't have to have everything ready to go, like resume or purpose and goal statement, you can actually submit those through our admissions uploader after submitting that initial application, if you will, just as long as they are received date stamped by October 31st. So again, you can submit those after the initial application, but definitely before the October 31st deadline. And you can do that through our admissions uploader. And so, just going on to our buckeyelink.osu.edu website that we have out there for the admissions uploader, and then monitoring that on your app status. So appstatus.osu.edu, logging on there with your credentials for your application, you'll be able to see all the items marked as complete, noting that you have a complete application. Anything that's marked as incomplete, definitely you want to reach out to us or our grad and professional admissions office just to see, if we do have that. The small caveat of noting that it does take time to process. We are receiving thousands of applications each week at Ohio State. And so again, our colleagues over there at grad and professional admissions are really working through those. And so just giving them a couple business days for those to process through. We generally advise 5 to 7 business days, but it could be a lot sooner than that. So I'm just monitoring that and making sure everything is complete by October 31st, 2018 at 11:59.
So then, once the deadline passes, we will send out an email to all applicants informing you as to whether or not you did in fact have a completed application or not. So if you did not manage to get all your materials in by the deadline, you'll hear back from us pretty soon after the deadline, letting you know that unfortunately your application was not complete and you're not moving forward for consideration. But hopefully by the deadline you'll have everything in, and instead you'll get the other correspondence, which will be an email informing you, hey, your application was complete, it's moving forward for consideration by our faculty. And at that time, we'll also include a firm timeline of the remainder of the admission process and when decisions will be released. Speaking about that, currently we are projecting that decisions will be released in mid to late February. We're hoping to get that exact date confirmed in the next few weeks here before the deadline. It's currently under review by our faculty, and so we don't have the exact date, but again, projecting mid to late February that we'll have those decisions out. And then in terms of the review process, just so that you are aware, the people that will be reviewing your application are going to be faculty specifically in the specialty program to which you're applying. So I used as an example earlier psychiatric mental health as one of our specialties. So if you apply to that program through the grad entry program or traditional masters or BSN to DNP, the people reviewing your application are only faculty in that specialty program. So that's sort of the audience you're talking to when you're writing your statement or doing your interview. These are people who've dedicated their lives and careers to this field of nursing, and they're looking for applicants that are just as passionate about it as they are. So I think that's just about everything that we wanted to cover, the sort of the frequently asked questions that we get. So at this point now, we just want to go ahead and open it up to you guys to go ahead and ask us your questions, and we'll try to answer them as best we can. Our colleague Megan is watching the chat window and is going to kind of relay them to us as they come through. So
I do actually have one.
Okay.
We had an individual ask whether there is an acceptance fee to the program.
Oh, yes, there is in fact an acceptance fee. It is 100, I think 250. That's okay. Yeah, there is a $250 acceptance fee. You will have upon receiving correspondence from us letting you know that you're being offered admission to the program that you applied, you will have after that 4 weeks to confirm that decision by paying that acceptance fee. So we give you 4 weeks to get all the ducks in the row and figure out and confirm with us that you're going to be accepting admission. So.
Can you also briefly just discuss the application fee, how much that is, and at the time at which a person would pay that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a $60 application fee, and so you're paying that to have a completed application. Just know that that's part of the actual application itself, and that's essentially going to be paid up front. So just note whenever you are completing that application on our graduate and professional admissions website that is a component that you can pay at the time of submitting the application.
I have another one. If you are a faculty, are you required to submit a letter of recommendation?
I think the question would be, are faculty required? Do we have to have a letter of recommendation from a faculty member? Is that required?
So for our recommenders, or for your recommenders, I should say, when you're trying to decide who to write your recommendation letters for you, we do recommend that one or two of your letters come from academic resources, so faculty members, professors that you've had, because faculty and professors are best equipped to speak about your potential for success in a graduate program. Supervisors are great, but they don't know your study habits or your, the quality of your schoolwork. So professors can speak towards that. It's not an absolute. If it's been a number of years since you've been out of school and do not have a strong relationship with any of your former professors, then don't sweat it. Get 3 people that you think are going to write good, personal, passionate letters of recommendation for you. And if you do have a strong relationship with some professors, then that's great. But just pick people that are gonna talk nicely about you and give you a good recommendation.
Yeah, and also just maybe talk about experiences and things like that they've had. Yeah. So putting your strengths and things along those lines into context, maybe through just an experience that they've had with you. Also, maybe just noting that it is going to be geared towards an academic program. So just having them talk about your strengths and characteristics and things like that, in terms of academic programs itself, because a letter of recommendation might look different for a job as it does for an academic program. So, and you can kind of coach them on that, just noting that I'm sure they might write a lot of recommendations for many people, and so this might be more of a unique type of recommendation if you are not going specifically towards faculty or professors first. And just like Doug said, just find somebody who's going to write the most robust letter of recommendation for you, as that's going to carry a lot more weight, I would say.
All right, we have quite a few questions, right, so I'm going to go ahead and take these in order.
Okay.
So the first one is from Andrea, and she wants to know, at any point, do online applicants need to come to campus or our master's or BSN and Dnp program?
That will depend on the specialty to which you're applying. So if you are going to be applying to one of our distance learning options, there are 4 specific specialties that can be done as a distance learning program. They include clinical nurse leader, family nurse practitioner, neonatal nurse practitioner, and psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. Clinical nurse leader and psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner do not require any visits to campus. Family nurse practitioner requires 1 visit to campus, and neonatal nurse practitioner requires 3 visits to campus. These are typically for skills assessments, usually over a weekend, and we make sure that you get those dates way in advance so that you can plan for that. There's also, every program also has an optional on-campus orientation and graduation ceremony at the beginning and at the end. We do highly recommend that everyone attend these if possible, but they aren't technically required. So, but they are highly recommended. And then for the BSN to DNP applicants out there, or postmaster's DNP applicants, if we have any, the DNP program is fully online. So if you're BSN to DNP and you do one of those distance learning ones, you'll have the 1 or 3, and then when you're in the DNP portion, you'll have no visits.
Great. My next question is from Erin, and she says, if you're an OSU student, do you have to request transcripts from OSU, or will they be automatically uploaded?
So yeah, that's a great question. We'll actually, since we are the custodians of that information, we will ensure that that gets linked up to your application. Also, kind of off of that, If you've attended any other institutions prior to attending Ohio State, transferred maybe into Ohio State, and had transcripts sent to Ohio State, for that maybe previous degree, then we might still have those in our system. So I would advise you to touch base with our grad and professional admissions just to see if they are in the system still. It just depends on maybe how long ago that was for you. And they'll be able to link up those transcripts if they came in officially. But yeah, the Ohio State transcripts we will have on there, just might take some time to process. But if you have any, if you did apply and you have any questions about maybe why that's not showing up after 3 to 5 business days, then definitely reach out to us or our colleagues at Grad and Professional Admissions.
Perfect. We also have a question about the GRE from Sean. And so his specific question is, do you need a GRE for the DNP program? I know for the MSN it's not required. Can you please just briefly describe the GRE requirements for our programs?
Sure. If you are applying to the BSN to Dnp program, which is the full 4 or 5 year program, including a master's and the DNP, that applying straight out of your bachelor's degree, that does require GRE scores to be submitted. The master's, just applying to a master's program, whether traditional or grad entry, or doing postmaster's DNP, you are not required to submit GRE scores unless you meet one of a few particular criteria, which is if either your cumulative undergraduate or cumulative graduate GPAs are below 3.0, you would be required to submit GRE scores for any graduate program, or if you have completed coursework at unaccredited institutions, then you would be required to submit GRE scores. But otherwise, for traditional master's grad entry or postmaster's DNP or postmaster's study, you're not required to submit GRE scores. But for BSN to DNP, regardless of your GPA or anything, you are required to submit them. And there's no absolute specific score you have to have. I always tell students to just get the best scores that they can achieve, and that will work for the purposes of processing your application. So.
Great. So there's a couple questions as it relates to clarifying the purpose of the uploader again. So just can you clarify, they can submit the initial application and the process for submitting the supplemental materials after that? Yeah, for sure. Sorry if there's any confusion on that, but basically, so when you're going onto our grad and professional admissions website and you're starting that general application with your name and all the generic information that we need to start that start that application itself. After you complete that and click submit, you are still able to hold on to your purpose and goal statement, your resume. You don't have to essentially submit that at the time that you're submitting that online application. So what you can do is, say you want to kind of read over your purpose and goal statement, come back to it a week later, see if there's any grammatical errors or anything like that you really want to brush up on. Since you've already submitted the application that's through the Grad and Professional Admissions website to apply to our program, you can actually come back at a later time and add materials to your application, like the purpose and goal statement, like your resume. So those are 2 things that you don't have to, like I said, submit at the time that you're clicking to submit your application, but they just have to be uploaded by that October 31st deadline. Was that? Great. No, that's perfect. Okay. There is a section on the application where you can upload your statement or your resume. There's also a third section for additional materials. Do we require applicants to upload anything through that additional materials section? That was no, I mean, so that's anything that's needed for our specific application is going to show on that list on our website. So there's nothing additional needed for your application. Just, like I said, as long as you're looking at your app center and everything showing as completed, and then, the things that are listed on our website are directly reflecting the app status on that. So. Can you please talk a little bit about the BSN to DNP program in terms of the specialties that are offered? Are all the same specialties offered for the BSN to DNP program as are offered for our master's program?
Just about. The clinical nurse leader specialty is the only specialty that's not available through the BSN to DNP program. Otherwise, all the other specialties available to the traditional master's program are available to the BSN to DNP.
Great. Can you just, again, real quickly, we had a question about summarizing what's required for the purpose and goal statement. Can you just real quickly run through those major points again?
Yeah, do you want to go ahead?
Well, yeah. Actually, here, I'll go back. Good things to cover for the purpose and goal statement would be your understanding of the role of the particular program to which you're applying. So again, if you're looking to become a neonatal nurse practitioner through our master's program, your understanding of what the role of the neonatal nurse practitioner is, both on a day-to-day and you know how they relate to other people in the healthcare system, and how they're different from other levels of certification or licensure in the nursing field. They want to know why you're choosing to pursue an advanced education in nursing and the specialty to which you're applying. They want to know about your career aspirations after graduation. So where you may want to work, who you want to work with, you know, what aspects of the specialty do you maybe want to focus on, anything like that, any particular goals that you may have. You know, experiences or things in your life that have put you on the path to becoming a nurse, a little bit of background of who you are and what has brought you into health and wellness. What you feel makes you a competitive applicant. What attributes do you think you're bringing with you that make you a good nurse and a good candidate for advanced education in nursing and the specialty to which you're applying? So those are all things to talk about.
Yeah, and I'd also toss in like what you're planning to do after graduation. So what kind of populations you might be wanting to work with, maybe location, whether it's in Ohio, it's in the United States, it's you know, where you want to be globally even. You know, there's a lot of different things that students want to ultimately do after they graduate from this type of program, and this is kind of the next step to be able to get to that end goal. So.
Great. I had a question to come about the fellowship process. Are you able to walk through the requirements to apply to be considered for a fellowship?
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
So basically with the fellowship, I mean, the GRE is needed for that, and that's specifically for the grad school. So as Doug said earlier, there's some things that are required. And so the GRE, you need to take that, have it on file. Since the application deadline of October 31st for us is before, I believe their deadline is sometime in December, then that will, you'll be on time for that. So basically, if you're interested, then you want to, you know, indicate interest with our grad school, and we will you're also competing against students across the board at Ohio State. So we will nominate students who indicate interest for a fellowship, whether it's the university fellowship or enrichment fellowship. One might be more geared towards you know, academics, where another one is based off of what kind of diversity you would bring to Ohio State, as that's, you know, one of our core values. So more information can be found through our through the graduate school in terms of like minimums for that, the GRE minimum, GPA minimum. So if you have any further questions on that, we'd be more than happy to answer them. But basically, you know, you're getting that first year your tuition assistance, you're getting a stipend each month. And so it is a way to help financially through you know, that first year of the program. But it's essentially, like I said, you're going to have to meet some extra requirements whenever you're submitting that. So.
Great. We have a question from Jacqueline about the prerequisites for the graduate entry program. Okay. She asks, how could you recommend completing the prerequisites if they are combined, for example, with anatomy and physiology?
Yeah, that's actually very common. Ohio State has separate anatomy, human anatomy, and human physiology courses. whereas a lot of schools out there combine them into Anatomy and Physiology 1 and then Anatomy and Physiology 2 over the course of 2 semesters. What we commonly see in those cases is that the completion of both semesters of that sequence, both Anatomy and Physiology 1 and Anatomy and Physiology 2, typically those transfer in as satisfying both human anatomy and human physiology for our prerequisites. Just doing one of the 2 semester sequence doesn't do anything for you, so you got to make sure that you get both. But generally, what we see is that the 2 semester sequence will fulfill both of those prerequisite requirements.
With the lab.
Yeah, you got to make sure that they do have a laboratory component, and that the labs are completed in person. Specifically, our human anatomy prerequisite requirements requires that it does have a lab in person, whereas human physiology as a standalone class doesn't. You just have to do the lecture. But if you're doing the 2 sequence combo, then basically both semesters have to have an in-person lab to satisfy the requirement. If there's questions about the coursework you've either completed or are considering completing, whether or not they would satisfy one of our prerequisites, what I recommend is that you just shoot a quick email to nursing@osu.edu. We check that email pretty constantly, and we've seen a lot of courses from around the country in the past and have had them evaluated, so we may be able to give you a quick answer like, oh yeah, that course is fine, go for it. If it's not something we've seen in the past, it actually then has to go through an evaluation process through our graduate admissions office, and then we'd be able to provide you with the information and the steps to get that process underway. But we always recommend checking with us first before you pay for the class and take the class and sweat through all the work, only to find out that it didn't work in the first place. So just let us know.
I had a couple questions asking about when letters of recommendation are due. Can you clarify the due date for this?
Sure. Yeah, letters of recommendation are due on October 31st for this application cycle. That'd be 2018. And so just like I said, make sure that they are in by that date. They're going to be date stamped when they come in. So obviously, if you're going to ask your recommenders, I would try to get them in before that date, just so you have a clear mind knowing that they're completed on their on your to-do list, on your application app status list. But as long as they're date stamped by October 31st, then we'll receive them. And just note that, again, it takes some time to process. We're not going to mark them late if we're internally processing them here.
I do want to just really quickly, just thought of it as I have that question. Like letters of recommendation, like all the other components of your application, since there was a question about the prerequisites for the grad entry program, the prerequisite courses also need to be completed by the October 31st deadline for your application to move forward for consideration. So we need to have transcripts reflecting the completed coursework on file and attached to your application by that deadline. So if you're in the course now and it won't be done until December, that's not going to work for this current application cycle. You'll have to wait and apply next year for summer 2020. But if you've already got everything done at this point, then you should be able to move forward. So just to clarify that as well. Everything's due by October 31st, pretty much.
We have a couple questions about the use of the uploader. Can you clarify what students can upload through that uploader? And if, let's say, they submit a copy of their statement but decide at a later date that they wanted to make some edits to it, can they resubmit a new copy of that statement?
So the things that can be submitted by way of the uploader are going to be, as we've mentioned, the purpose and goal statement, the resume or CV, and then I mentioned earlier that there's you can scan an official copy of a transcript and submit it by way of the uploader. That is everything I think that can be.
Yeah. And
Well, unless you're if you're a BSN to DNP applicant, then there's also the verification of hours form and the supervisor's letter of support need to be sent by the supervisor.
That can get uploaded.
Oh, that can be uploaded too?
Yep.
Okay, that can be uploaded too. So yeah, there's a few things, extra materials that the BSN to DNP applicants need to do, but generally, like for the master's programs, it's going to be the resume, CV, purpose and goal statement, and an official copy of a transcript scanned. If you submit your statement and then later want to submit a new version of it, you can do that. What we recommend would be to get in contact with us again by email or phone, just to let us know that that's happening, so that we can just make the adjustments to your materials in there, and then you would just upload it so that the review committees don't end up getting multiple versions of your statement and aren't sure which ones to review. And that is also worth noting with the letters of recommendation. A lot of students will ask sometimes if they can submit more than 3 letters of recommendation or more than 3 recommenders. No.
3 minimum, 3 maximum.
3 minimum, 3 maximum. So if you end up having 4 letters submitted, what ends up happening is it's the 3 most recent letters will move forward for consideration by the reviewers. So just be aware of that. And you can actually, if you submit a recommender on your application initially and they fall through or something like that, you can contact graduate and professional admissions and let them know that there's an issue and that you want to submit another person as a recommender, and they can make that adjustment and get the correspondence out to that recommender so they can submit the letter in place of the person that fell through for you. So those sort of adjustments can be made after the fact by just reaching out and asking.
Somebody asked, is it possible to apply or be admitted to 2 specialties? For example, the person was asking about FNP and psych mental health.
So students are applying to 1 specialty at a time, or for an application cycle. And so you will, ultimately, some students might do like a postmaster's, which is a little bit afterwards. So postmaster certification, if you do maybe have interest in working with multiple populations, but essentially for the application purposes and for, that the degree itself, you are applying to 1 specialty, indicating that on the application itself.
Yeah. Now, after graduating with your master's degree, if you do want to pursue a second specialty, you can do so through our postmaster's study option. Basically, this is you attend effectively as a non-degree student and are just simply pursuing the coursework to that second specialty that leads you to be eligible to sit for that certification, though it doesn't lead to another master's degree or anything like that. So it is possible to continue afterward and pursue a second one. They just can't be done simultaneously.
Sunny asks, would you recommend submitting a recommendation from an APRN over that of an MD or a doctor position?
I guess yes. If you feel like you have, they would be just as good of a recommender for you, then I think, yeah, a nurse practitioner would have more relevance to obviously applying to a nursing program than an MD. But again, if you've worked with that under that doctor or with that doctor for a long time, and you've got a really good personal relationship with them, and they know you really well, and they would definitely step up to the plate for you and write a really good recommendation letter, then they may be a better option than maybe a nurse practitioner who you don't have as strong of a relationship with. So you got to kind of, I would say it's really up to you, but if they're both on sort of an even playing field for you, then I would go with the nurse practitioner over the MD.
We have one more question about letters of recommendation. Can you just again detail exactly how that individual received that communication and what it would look like for the person who's uploading the letter, the process that they would go through?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, when you're submitting that application as a student on our grad professional admissions website, at the end it's advising or it's asking for the recommender's name and their email address. And once you click submit, that's going to trigger an email out to your recommenders. Your recommenders are going to receive that email with instructions on how to submit their recommendation back to Ohio State. So they can just attach, it'll just basically say attach, as a PDF format, and then they'll answer a couple of quick questions on a questionnaire, and then they'll submit it back to Ohio State. Once they do that, It's all electronically, like I said. Once they do that, it'll update on your applicant status, on your app status. And so really there's nothing that you necessarily need to do other than putting the email in and then just asking them, hey, did you submit it back to Ohio State yet? I just want to know kind of where it is, just because they might have done it and then it's just in our processing timeline there. But yeah, I mean, again, like I said, it's going to be all digital, and they're going to get instructions on how to submit it back to us, and it's pretty lockstep in that way.
Sean asks, can you speak of the benefits to the DNP program? He's graduated with his BSN, he will be graduating rather, with his BSN this coming May, and he's debating between going through that master's program or the BSN to DNP program. What are some considerations that Sean should think about?
You can end up pursuing the DNP either through first doing a standalone master's program and then coming back and doing a postmaster's DNP, or doing a straight through BSN to DNP, which does include a master's degree. So doing BSN to DNP, you will graduate with both the Master's of Science of Nursing and the Doctor of Nursing Practice, as well as will sit for certification in your advanced specialty. The benefit to doing the straight through BSN to DNP is that it technically takes less time, because the program is designed to sort of I don't know what's the best word.
You're not retaking some classes,
yeah.
It's streamlining some of those.
So it's designed to be a cohesive program. So it's a bit faster than if you were to do just the master's and then immediately go into postmaster's DNP. That said, not everybody who is ready to go into a master's program is fully confident that they eventually want to go on to the DNP program. So some people choose instead to just go and get the master's degree and then go out and be a nurse practitioner or advanced nurse for a while, get some more professional experience, and then come back to the DNP. There's really no right or wrong answer. It's just really about where you are in terms of knowing what your end goal is. The reason to go for a doctorate level degree, and specifically the Doctor of Nursing Practice, is, again, it's an advanced education in your specialty field and in nursing. And really the DNP is about evidence-based practice. And it's about the, DNPs synthesize the results of research into the methodology and practice of nurses. So if that's really something that you're interested in and you're really gung-ho about evidence-based practice, then the DNP is definitely going to be the direction you're going to want to go. If instead you're interested in actually doing the research, you may want to consider our PhD program. Because the PhDs are the ones doing the research, and then they hand the results over to the DNPs who synthesize the results and pass that down to the NPs and the RNs to go out and practice.
Great. I think those are all the questions we have. Could you guys just once more recap the timeline for decisions once the application deadline has passed? And then I think we should begin.
Yeah, for sure. So basically October 31st, application deadline, and then our faculty will review all the information, all the materials that you've submitted, over the next couple months, and then we will have decisions out, projected to be around mid to late February of 2019. So for students that are applying for the specific programs that end on October, the application deadline of October 31st. So just look out for that. We'll also have some information online in an infographic. We'll kind of go through the whole the next steps in terms of what you can expect in that timeline. So we'll have that out here on our website in the next couple weeks. But again, we just wanted to thank you all for joining us online today. And if you do have any additional questions outside of what we discussed today, feel free to contact us, nursing@osu.edu, or our phone number 614-292-4041. We also have another application help session that's going to be on campus. So for those of you who are local, you can come in and join us if you have any other additional questions that you might want to ask. And a reminder, this will be recorded. This is being recorded, and so if you do want essentially a copy of it or to review it later, then just please let us know through that. So again, just thank you. Do you have any final words?
No.
All right.
Just good luck moving forward with your applications. And yeah, let us know if you have any questions. We're here. We're happy to help.
Yeah. Have a good afternoon.